She was humiliated by her ex-fiancé. Until the millionaire put his ring on her in front of everyone. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The music was soft, elegant, and cruel. Golden lights shimmered across the crystal chandeliers as laughter filled the grand ballroom. She stood near the center of it all. Clara James, the girl who had once believed this would be the happiest night of her life. Her white dress was modest but carefully chosen, her hands trembling as she held a glass of sparkling water. Around her, polished men in tuxedos and women in glittering gowns whispered behind manicured hands. Her fiancé, Evan, raised his champagne glass. "Everyone," he announced, his smile sharp as a knife, "I think it is time you all know who my bride-to-be really is." The crowd turned, curious. Clara's heart pounded. Evan continued, voice dripping with arrogance. "She did not tell you she used to clean tables at my father's hotel. She came from nothing, pretending to be someone she is not. I guess some people will do anything to climb." The laughter that followed hit harder than a slap. Clara froze. Her throat burned, her fingers gripping the glass so tight she thought it might break. "I never pretended," she whispered, her voice trembling. But no one listened. Phones were already raised, recording, capturing her humiliation forever. Evan smirked, stepping closer. "Relax, Clara. Consider this your lesson. A girl like you should know her place." Leave. The sound of her glass shattering on the marble floor was the only thing that broke the silence. Tears blurred the lights as she turned and ran past the stairs, past the whispers, past the doorman who pretended not to see. Outside, rain poured over the city like it was trying to wash the night away. Her heels slipped on the wet pavement as she stumbled, clutching her coat around her shoulders. The cold bit through her skin, but not as deep as the shame. She kept walking, until the hotel lights faded into a blur behind her. No cab stopped. No one looked twice. By the time she reached the side street near the parking lot, the rain had soaked her through, and the diamond ring Evan once placed on her finger felt like poison. She pulled it off and threw it into a puddle. The metal hit the water with a dull sound. That was when a shadow moved near her. A tall man stepped out from under a black umbrella, his suit immaculate despite the storm. He bent down, picked up the ring, and held it out to her. "You should not lose something like this," he said quietly, his voice steady, calm, almost kind. Clara looked up, startled. His face was partly hidden by the rain, but his eyes were steady gray, unreadable, and full of something she could not name. "I do not need it," she murmured, turning away. The man hesitated for a moment, then took off his coat and placed it over her shoulders. "You do not deserve to be standing out here in the rain," he said. Before she could reply, he walked away, disappearing into the downpour as silently as he had appeared. She stood there, shivering under his coat, rain dripping from her hair. For the first time that night, someone had not laughed at her. Someone had simply cared. She did not know yet that the stranger who had given her his coat was Ethan Cole, the reclusive millionaire who owned the very company that had hosted her engagement party. And she had no idea that this small act of kindness would soon turn her world upside down. The next morning, the city looked nothing like the glittering ballroom she had fled. The rain had stopped, but gray clouds still hung low, heavy with silence. Clara walked along the narrow street near her apartment, the borrowed coat folded neatly over her arm. She had spent the night awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every cruel laugh, every flash of the cameras, every word that had shattered her. Her phone was still buzzing with notifications, but she could not bear to read them. Her name was trending for all the wrong reasons. By the time she reached the small cafe on the corner, her stomach was empty, and her eyes burned from crying. She ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu and sat in the farthest booth, facing the window. The world outside moved on as if nothing had happened. She watched a couple share a pastry, a delivery boy smile at a stranger, and wondered how many people could walk past someone's heartbreak without ever noticing. Her reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar, pale, tired, but still alive. She touched the coat on her lap, remembering the man who had given it to her. The fabric still carried a faint scent, something like cedar and rain. She had not even asked for his name. Maybe he was just another stranger who would forget her by sunrise. Yet somehow, thinking of him felt like the only warm thing left. A soft knock on the glass startled her. The barista, a young woman with kind eyes, pointed toward the counter. "Someone paid for your coffee," she said. Clara blinked. "Who?" "He left already," the barista said with a small smile. "Tall man, gray eyes. Said to tell you to keep the coat." Clara turned toward the street, but the sidewalk was empty. Her heart skipped, unsure whether to feel grateful or confused. She sipped the coffee slowly, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. For the first time since last night, she breathed without trembling. Later that afternoon, she gathered the courage to send her resume to a few local companies. Most ignored her application the moment they recognized her name, but one reply came back within an hour. Ardent Events Group. The message was short. "Interview tomorrow at 10 a.m. Ask for Mr. Cole." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Ardent was one of the biggest luxury event planners in the city, the same company that had organized Evan's engagement party. The irony stung, but she needed a job, any job. She pressed send. That night, she ironed her only clean blouse and rehearsed what she would say. "I made a mistake," she whispered to her reflection, "but I am not that mistake." The next morning, the elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. The office was sleek, filled with glass walls and quiet efficiency. When the receptionist led her into the meeting room, she froze. Behind the desk stood the man from the rain, the one who had picked up her ring and given her his coat. "Miss James," he said, his tone calm professional. "I am Ethan Cole, director of Ardent Group." She stared, speechless. The world tilted slightly, her heart thundering in her chest. "I believe we met before," he continued gently. "Do you still have the coat?" Her voice broke on a whisper. "Yes. Why did you help me that night?" Ethan studied her for a moment before replying. "Because everyone else looked away. And, in that instant, the shame she had carried began to loosen its grip, just a little. She realized this man, this stranger, was not just offering her a job. He was offering her a chance to stand again. Clara's first week at Ardent felt like walking into another world. The office was a symphony of motion, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, soft music playing in the background. Everyone moved with quiet purpose, dressed in sleek black and gray. She kept her head down, focused on tasks, arranging floral deliveries, confirming guest lists, typing memos she barely understood. Ethan Cole passed her desk several times a day. He never mentioned that night in the rain, but sometimes, when their eyes met, she felt the same calm she had felt under his umbrella. He treated her with an even tone, firm but fair. Yet there was something about him that made the air heavier whenever he entered the room. He spoke little, observed everything, and expected excellence from everyone. On Friday afternoon, Ethan called her into his office. The room smelled faintly of leather and coffee, its wide windows overlooking the city skyline. He gestured toward the chair opposite his desk. "You are adapting quickly," he said. "But I need to ask, why choose this job after what happened?" Clara hesitated, fingers tightening around her notebook. "Because I need to work," she said quietly. "And because I want to prove that last week was not the end of me." Ethan leaned back, studying her. "You do not have to prove anything to anyone, Miss James." She gave a faint smile. "Maybe not. But I need to prove it to myself." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Ethan nodded once. "Fair enough. Tomorrow we are hosting a charity gala. I want you on site to observe. You will learn more in one night than in a month of office work." No. The next evening, the ballroom glowed again, but this time, Clara was not there as a guest. She was behind the scenes, dressed in black, wearing a staff badge. The scent of roses and candle wax filled the air. She checked table numbers, adjusted name cards, and made sure no detail was out of place. For a moment, she thought she saw the reflection of her old self in one of the mirrors, the girl who had once stood in the center of the room and broken apart. When the event began, Ethan moved through the crowd with effortless composure. His calm presence seemed to command the room without a single raised word. At one point, he caught Clara's eye across the room and gave her a brief nod, almost like encouragement. Later, as the orchestra played softly, a waiter tripped near the dessert table, sending a tray crashing to the floor. The crowd gasped. Clara reacted before anyone else, rushing to help, picking up the plates with steady hands. Her calm steadied the others, and within moments, the chaos passed. When she looked up, Ethan was watching from across the room, a faint smile curving his lips. After the guests departed, Ethan approached her. "You handled that well," he said. She brushed flour from her hands, still catching her breath. "It was nothing. It was not nothing," he replied quietly. "Most people freeze when things go wrong. You did not." Under the soft glow of the chandeliers, she felt warmth rise to her face. For the first time in days, she laughed softly. "Maybe I have had enough practice cleaning up messes." Ethan's expression softened, just slightly. "We all have," he said. As they stood among the half-cleared tables, something shifted. It was not a confession, not yet, but an understanding. The woman who had walked into the storm was still healing, and the man who had found her there was learning, perhaps for the first time, how to care again. The following week unfolded quietly, but something between them had changed. Clara noticed it first in small things, the way Ethan paused when speaking to her, how his voice softened just slightly when he gave instructions. She still kept her distance, but the wall she had built around her heart began to show cracks. For the first time in months, she looked forward to coming to work. Each morning, she arrived early, checking the event schedule before anyone else. She liked the rhythm of preparation. The rustle of fresh linens, the scent of new flowers, the hum of the espresso machine echoing through the corridor. When she passed Ethan's office, she often saw him standing by the window, coffee in hand, staring at the city below as if searching for something lost. One rainy afternoon, the elevator malfunctioned, trapping several staff members between floors. Clara had been inside with Ethan and two others. The lights flickered, then went out, leaving only the emergency glow. Someone gasped, another cursed softly. Clara took a steady breath. "It is all right," she said gently. "We will be fine." Her calm voice seemed to ground the others. Ethan turned toward her, his face illuminated by the faint light. "You always do that," he said quietly. "Do what?" "Find calm when everyone else loses it." She smiled faintly. "Maybe it is easier when you have already seen worse." "Oh." He studied her expression for a long moment. "I suppose you have." The emergency lights hummed. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. The small space seemed to close around them, but strangely, Clara did not feel afraid. When the elevator doors finally opened, Ethan gestured for the others to leave first. As she stepped out, his hand brushed her shoulder, light but certain. "Thank you," he said, "for keeping them calm." That night, she stayed late to finish invoices. When she left the office, the rain was still falling. She hesitated at the entrance, watching cars splash through puddles. A familiar black car pulled up beside the curb. The driver's window rolled down. It was Ethan. "You will not find a taxi at this hour," he said. "Let me drive you home." She hesitated, then nodded. The ride was quiet at first. City lights reflected across the windshield, blurring like a watercolor painting. Ethan broke the silence. "I looked you up," he said softly. "Not to invade your privacy. I just wanted to understand what really happened that night." Her hands tightened in her lap. "There is nothing to understand. I trusted the wrong person. I thought love meant forgiveness. But I learned it can also mean humiliation." He glanced at her, his jaw tightening. "No one deserves that." The car stopped outside her apartment building. She turned to him, unsure what to say. "Thank you, Mr. Cole." He met her eyes. "Call me Ethan." "No." She hesitated, then nodded. "Good night, Ethan." He waited until she disappeared through the doorway before driving off. The next morning, when Clara arrived at work, a small box sat on her desk. Inside was her coffee order and a single note written in careful handwriting. "Some storms are not meant to break you. They are meant to show you who will walk beside you." She stared at the words for a long time, feeling something shift deep within her chest. It was not love, not yet, but it was hope, fragile and bright, like the first hint of sunlight after rain. Days turned into weeks, and Clara slowly became part of Arden's rhythm. Her confidence grew with every event she managed, every problem she solved quietly before it reached Ethan's desk. People in the office began to look at her differently, not as the woman from the scandal, but as someone capable, steady, and kind. One evening, while preparing for a corporate benefit, Clara noticed Ethan still in his office long after everyone else had gone. His desk lamp cast a warm pool of light over the papers scattered across the surface. He looked tired, his tie loosened, his hair slightly disheveled. For a moment, she hesitated at the doorway, unsure whether to interrupt. Then she knocked softly, Still here? She asked. He looked up, surprised but not displeased. Deadlines. They never end. She smiled. Maybe they would if you let someone else help. He leaned back in his chair, watching her. Is that an offer? Only if it comes with coffee, she replied, half joking. They ended up working together for hours, sorting files, reviewing schedules, and laughing over small mistakes that felt enormous during the day but harmless now. There was an ease between them, something unspoken yet undeniable. When the clock struck midnight, Ethan looked at her and said quietly, "You make the silence less heavy." She felt her heart flutter, but she looked away, pretending to focus on the papers. "Maybe that is what assistants are for," she said lightly. He smiled faintly. "No, that is what good people do." The next morning, news broke online. Evan's company had been exposed for financial fraud. His name trended again, this time for all the wrong reasons. Clara froze when she saw the headlines. Her phone buzzed with messages from reporters, but she ignored them. Ethan noticed her pale face during the morning briefing and dismissed the team early. "Are you all right?" he asked once they were alone. "I do not know," she admitted. "I should feel angry, maybe even satisfied, but I just feel tired." Ethan studied her quietly before speaking. "Vindication rarely feels like peace. You do not need to prove anything anymore." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "Then what do I do now?" "Live," he said softly. "Let yourself live again." That evening, he invited her to accompany him to a smaller charity dinner as part of the planning team. She hesitated but agreed. The venue glowed with warm light, music soft and gentle. For the first time since her humiliation, Clara walked into a public room without fear. People greeted her respectfully. Some even complimented her work. During a quiet moment on the balcony, she found herself beside Ethan. The city lights stretched endlessly below them. He handed her a glass of sparkling water instead of wine. "You look like you finally belong here," he said. She smiled faintly. "I never belonged anywhere before." "Maybe that was because you were looking in the wrong rooms," he said. A silence fell between them, not awkward but fragile. Clara turned to face him, the wind catching her hair. "Ethan," she said softly, "why did you really help me?" He looked at her for a long time before answering. "Because when I saw you standing there in the rain, I remembered someone I once lost. Someone who believed kindness could still matter, even when the world mocked it." For the first time, Clara saw not the powerful CEO, but a man carrying his own quiet grief. She wanted to ask who that person was, but she stopped herself. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you for not looking away." "Lo." He met her eyes, his voice almost a whisper. "Maybe I was the one who needed saving." That night, as she rode home, Clara pressed her hand over her heart. It was beating fast not from fear, but from something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope was no longer fragile, it was alive. The next few weeks felt different, quieter but heavier with meaning. Clara and Ethan worked side by side on several large projects, and each late-night meeting seemed to draw them closer without either daring to name it. The space between them began to feel charged, full of things unsaid. One morning, Ethan asked her to join him on a site visit for a major fundraising gala. The event would take place in a newly restored theater downtown, a place with golden balconies and deep crimson curtains that shimmered in the light. Clara walked through the aisles, taking notes on placements, colors, and sound cues, while Ethan discussed logistics with the design team. She moved with quiet confidence now, and he noticed. When the others stepped out for lunch, they found themselves alone in the grand hall. The air was still, full of dust and sunlight. Clara traced a finger along one of the carved banisters. "It is beautiful," she said softly. Ethan stood a few feet away, his voice low. "It used to be abandoned for years. Sometimes things just need someone willing to bring them back to life." She turned, catching his gaze. There was something in his tone that felt like more than a metaphor. Before she could reply, his phone buzzed sharply. He frowned at the screen, the warmth in his eyes replaced by cold focus. "Excuse me." He walked a few steps away, his voice lowering as he spoke. Clara could not hear the words, but his expression darkened. When he ended the call, his shoulders were tense. "Bad news?" she asked. He exhaled slowly. "An investor is threatening to pull out of the project. He claims I have been distracted." Her brow furrowed. "Distracted? That does not sound fair." He met her eyes again, and for a moment, the weight of his gaze made her breath catch. Maybe he is right, he said quietly. The conversation left her uneasy. Later that day, when she returned to the office, a murmur of gossip drifted through the corridors. Someone had seen her and Ethan together at the theater, laughing, talking closely. The whispers spread fast, and by the end of the day, even the receptionists were glancing at her with curiosity. That evening, Ethan called her into his office. He looked calm, but the air between them was strained. "Clara," he began, "I need to warn you. People talk. They always will. But I want you to know that you have done nothing wrong." She nodded slowly. "I can handle it. I have been called worse." He looked at her for a long time, his voice softening. "You should not have to handle it alone." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Clara spoke quietly, her voice steady but full of feeling. "Ethan, I am grateful for everything you have done. But if people start thinking I earned my place here because of you, all this, the second chance you gave me, will mean nothing." His jaw tightened. "Do you really think that is what people will believe?" She gave a small, sad smile. "It is what they already do." Ethan stood, frustration flickering behind his calm exterior. "You should not have to keep paying for other people's cruelty." Clara's eyes softened. "Maybe not, but I have learned something from it. Sometimes, the only way to stop people from defining you is to keep walking until their voices fade." He did not argue. Instead, he nodded once, the faintest hint of pride in his eyes. "Then keep walking, Clara. Just do not walk too far from me." "No." When she left his office, her heart was pounding. The line between gratitude and something deeper had already blurred. Outside, the night was cool, and the city lights stretched endlessly before her. For the first time, she wondered what scared her more, the pain of falling again, or the possibility that this time, it might actually be love. The following week, tension settled over the office like a shadow. Rumors continued to swirl, quiet but poisonous, spreading through whispered conversations and side glances. Clara did her best to ignore them, focusing on the gala preparations. But every time she heard her name, her hands shook slightly. She had worked so hard to rebuild her reputation, and the thought of losing it again made her chest tighten. Ethan noticed. One afternoon, as she handed him a folder, he said softly, "They talk because they see what they do not understand. Let them. The work will speak louder." She nodded but did not answer. Deep down, she feared the story would repeat itself, admiration turning into humiliation. The night before the gala, a storm swept through the city. Rain hammered against the glass walls of Arden's headquarters as Clara stayed late, finalizing details. When she finally left, thunder rolled over the skyline, echoing the turmoil inside her. She walked home under her umbrella, unaware that someone had been following her from the lobby. At dawn, her phone rang. It was Ethan's assistant, panic in her voice. "Clara, there is a problem. The press found out you are on the team. They are hinting that Mr. Cole gave you the job out of personal interest. They plan to question it tonight at the gala." Clara's stomach dropped. "Who told them?" "We do not know," the woman said. "But Evan's PR agency is involved." For a moment, everything went still. It was happening again, her name being used as a weapon. That evening, she arrived at the venue early, determined not to run this time. The theater glittered with golden light, a perfect reflection of Ethan's ambition. Guests began to fill the room, journalists among them. Clara checked her earpiece and whispered updates to the team, trying to focus on the work. When Ethan entered, the crowd shifted, cameras flashing. He looked every inch, the powerful CEO composed, confident, untouchable. But when his eyes found Clara across the room, his expression softened, if only for a heartbeat. Halfway through the evening, a reporter cornered her near the stage. "Miss James," he said, voice sharp, "do you think your relationship with Mr. Cole influenced your position here?" Conversations around them hushed. Clara felt the heat rise to her face. "My position?" she repeated, forcing her voice to stay calm. "I earned it the same way everyone here did, through work." The man smirked. "Convenient answer." Before she could respond, another voice cut through the noise. "That is enough." Ethan's tone was firm, commanding. He stepped forward, the crowd parting instinctively. "If you have questions about my company's decisions, direct them to me, not to my employees." The reporter's smirk faltered. "Mr. Cole, are you confirming personal involvement?" Ethan's gaze was steady. "I am confirming integrity. and hers surpasses anyone I have met in this industry. Silence filled the hall. Cameras clicked, recording every second. Clara stood frozen, her heart pounding in her ears. Ethan's eyes never left hers as he spoke again, quieter this time, but everyone could still hear him. She saved my company more times than anyone knows. And yes, she saved me too. The crowd murmured, uncertain whether they had just witnessed a defense or a confession. Clara felt her breath tremble. For the first time, she realized Ethan was not just protecting her reputation. He was risking his own. As the orchestra resumed playing, he turned slightly toward her. "You did nothing wrong, Clara," he said softly. "And I will make sure everyone knows it." In that moment, surrounded by flashing lights and whispers, the humiliation that had haunted her for so long began to lose its power. What replaced it was something new, raw, fragile, and terrifyingly real. After the confrontation at the gala, the night did not end the way anyone expected. The music continued, but the air had shifted, every camera lens now subtly turned toward Ethan and Clara. She felt every glance, every whisper, as she stood near the edge of the ballroom trying to steady her breathing. Ethan stayed by her side for the rest of the evening. When guests approached him, he answered with calm professionalism, making sure no one cornered her again. Yet behind his composed demeanor, there was something deeper, a quiet, unspoken fury at how easily the world turned cruelty into entertainment. When the final toast ended, and the last of the guests had drifted out, Clara remained by the stage, helping the staff clear decorations. Ethan approached, loosening his tie. "You should go home," he said gently. She shook her head. "I am fine." He studied her face for a long moment. "No, you are not." She looked down at the floor, her voice soft. "I just wanted one night where my name did not mean a headline." Ethan took a slow breath. "Then let me change the story." Before she could ask what he meant, the ballroom lights dimmed. He stepped onto the small stage, signaling the sound crew to pause. A few remaining journalists turned their heads, cameras half raised. Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out something small, a ring, simple and elegant, gleaming under the soft lights. The room went silent. Clara froze. "Ethan, what are you doing?" she whispered. He looked at her, his voice low but clear. "Correcting a mistake I did not make but can help undo." He faced the room, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "A long time ago, this woman was humiliated in front of a crowd very much like this one. Her worth was questioned, her dignity stolen for sport. But tonight, in this room, I want every person watching to understand something. Dignity cannot be taken, it can only be surrendered." And she never did. He turned toward her, taking her hand. "Clara James, you reminded me what integrity looks like. You reminded me that kindness is not weakness. So, if you will allow me, I would like to return something that should have always belonged to you." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It was not the same one she had thrown into the puddle that night, but it looked just like it. The symbolism was unmistakable. Cameras flashed again, but this time the moment felt different. The humiliation that had once defined her now transformed into something powerful, undeniable. Clara's eyes filled with tears, her voice barely a whisper. "Ethan, you cannot just—" He interrupted softly. "I'm not asking for an answer tonight. I'm asking you to let the world see that you were never broken." The audience, once silent, began to applaud. Not the polite applause of corporate manners, but something genuine, human. The sound washed over her like a wave. For the first time since that awful night, she did not feel small. When the applause faded, Ethan leaned close and whispered, "You deserve to stand in the light, Clara, always." She met his gaze, her voice trembling but steady. "You should know something, Ethan. You did not save me tonight. You just helped me remember I could save myself." He smiled, the faintest hint of relief in his eyes. "Then we are even." Outside, the rain had stopped. As they stepped out of the theater, Clara tilted her face to the night sky. The air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of renewal. The flashes, the rumors, the shame, all of it faded into the distance. For the first time in a long while, she felt free. And beside her, Ethan walked quietly, not as her savior or her boss, but as something far simpler and far truer, a man who had finally found what he was missing when he saw her in the rain. A few months passed after that unforgettable night, but its echoes remained everywhere. The video of Ethan's public defense in the ring had gone viral within hours. For the first time, Clara's name trended for the right reason. People called it the redemption proposal, a moment when courage met grace under pressure. The cruel comments vanished, replaced by admiration and quiet respect. But for Clara, the truest victory was much simpler. She could finally walk into a room and hold her head high. She stayed at Ardent, continuing her work with the same quiet dedication. Ethan never treated her differently after that night. They remained partners, professional, composed, but there was an unspoken understanding in every shared glance, every late meeting that stretched past midnight. They no longer needed words to acknowledge what they both already knew. One afternoon, months later, Clara received an invitation embossed in gold. It was for the opening of a new community arts center funded by the Ardent Foundation. The letter carried Ethan's familiar signature at the bottom, but the final line made her heart catch. It read, "For those who were once silenced, may this place help them find their voice again." When she arrived at the event, the building glowed with warm light and soft music. Photographs lined the walls, images of people rebuilding their lives, their faces full of hope. At the center of the lobby stood a framed photograph of a young woman standing in the rain, wrapped in a black coat. The caption read, "Strength begins the moment you decide not to run." Ethan found her standing there motionless. "Do you like it?" he asked. Clara turned to him, her voice thick with emotion. "You did this for them." He smiled gently. "For all of us. Everyone deserves a place to begin again." They walked through the exhibition together. At the end of the hall, on a small pedestal under a glass dome, sat a simple silver ring, the same one Ethan had placed on her finger that night, now engraved with the words, "Dignity Restored." She looked at it, then back at him. "You really want to keep this here?" she asked softly. "I want it to remind people that kindness has power," he said, "that standing up for someone can change everything." The guests began to gather in the main hall for the ceremony. When the speeches ended, Ethan stepped forward to thank his team, but then he paused, looking toward Clara. "There is one more person I need to thank," he said. "Someone who taught me that leadership is not about control, but compassion." His eyes found hers. "Clara, none of this would exist without you." Applause filled the room. She felt her throat tighten, unsure how to respond. As the crowd began to disperse, Ethan approached her quietly. "Do you still believe some storms come to show you who will walk beside you?" Clara smiled, remembering the note he had once left her. "I do." "Then maybe it is time we stop walking and start building something together," he said softly. Her breath caught, her heart racing. "You mean?" He held out his hand, the same calm certainty in his eyes that had steadied her from the start. "I mean us. No grand speeches, no audience, just us." For a moment, she said nothing. Then, she took his hand. "All right, Ethan, but this time, no spotlight." He laughed quietly. "Deal." As they stepped outside, the city lights shimmered against the dark sky. A light drizzle began to fall, soft and warm. Clara looked up, smiling through it. The rain no longer reminded her of pain, it reminded her of beginnings. Sometimes the world tries to humiliate you, to break your spirit. But if you hold on long enough, the right person will not just help you stand again, they will stand beside you. Because true love does not arrive with applause. It arrives quietly, in the rain.